All right, guys, welcome back to Schmattz Outdoors. We're up to the next installment on the Coyote fur handling series here. This one's going to be boarding them and turning them and then reboarding them after that. And then there'll be one more video after this that will be kind of the final comb and everything just to prepare them to get them ready to sell. That video shouldn't be too long. It's a fairly simple process. Once you get the boarding and turning process down, that last step goes pretty quick, and everything I've done up to this point is to make that step as quick as possible. Spending the time pulling all the burrs out of them, washing the coyote after I skinned him. All that helps to increase your presentation of your fur to the fur buyer. Whether you're shipping it to an auction house where they're grading it, or you're selling it to your local fur buyer, they're looking at it and grading it whether you think they are or not. You know, if they find a burr in there that makes the hair look, you know, out of place, they're going to probably downgrade you for that. So like I said, every one of these steps is to just try and increase the value of your fur in the eyes of the fur buyer. So again, this step is going to be boarding them and then turning them when they're, you know, dry, and I'll get into that in a minute here, and then putting them back on. So I use adjustable stretchers. I have a couple videos out on my channel on these. The first video was when I originally built these guys. I did a second video that kind of goes through, I reshaped the front profile of my boards a little bit, so they're tapered a little more at the nose and a little bit more like on the shoulders. From the shoulders to like mid-body, they're tapered a little bit, and it's just to try and not overstretch the neck area of my coyotes, and reshaping the face, the head of it, so they actually like wrap around my board a little bit nicer. So there's a video of that coming out as well, or that, you know, you guys can go back and look at the profile of that. So we got my adjustable coyote stretcher here. I have my fleshed coyote right here. So I just got done fleshing this guy, and we're gonna go right into the step process. I don't do anything else with them. Once I flesh them, they go directly onto the board here. So I'm gonna attach you to my chest mount here. You guys should be able to see what I'm doing. We're gonna try and make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm actually gonna do it up on my skinning table here. So I'm going to do this up on the table. Normally I would stand my coyote stretcher up on the floor, and I'm going to kind of show you that, but then I'm going to pick them up and pin them where you guys can actually see it. So I'll get you mounted here, and then we'll get going. So we're ready to put this coyote on this board. I typically put my coyotes on my boards the exact same way every time, and that way it's nice and easy to take them on and off. And I laid my coyote on here. Here's his tail. I laid him on here. How typically he's going to go on. Obviously he'll be up on the end down there, but I like the back of my coyote on this side with my lower boards facing the way I have them, because again, that's the side I have my nail on. But what that allows me to do is to actually do this, you know, so I'm just pushing him open. I'm using my thumb to push it open so I can get it pushed open and get my nail back in. If I have my stretcher the opposite way, it's not as easy to pull the thing open this way and hold it open to get my nail put back in one of these holes to get it locked in there. It doesn't go in there as easily, especially when you have the animal slit on there. So again, I'm a man of consistency. The more consistent I do it, the quicker you get at it, and the easier it ends up being for you in the long run. So we're gonna get my nail. So I got my nail in the first hole of my stretcher. That keeps about a 1/4 inch gap in there. So how I typically put them on there is I have my stretcher standing here. I will slide my animal on here. We're gonna try and keep so you guys could, oh, that wasn't good. Just caught my box of quick pins there. All right, so I will grab the tail of the animal here. I will grab the tail, and then I'll just slip it up over the top of my stretcher and just kind of slowly slide it down. Then I'll lean it out and turn it towards me. You can see how like the head and the legs here are kind of, you know, dangling there, and just making sure that my stretcher didn't go up into the one of the front legs, and that I get it all the way down so the nose is right on the end of my stretcher here. So get it pulled on there nice and tight so the nose is on. Then I slowly kind of work down the coyote, just making sure that he's straight. You know, I don't want like twisted way like that where, you know, one leg's on the belly, one's on the back. So I try to kind of go all the way down him here and just make sure like this is his penis hole. I'm trying to make sure that's right in the middle. And once I kind of have him where I think I want him, I literally just kind of tap my stretcher on the floor down there. And that seems like it just kind of seats him on there nicely. What I would typically do is you know what, I'll do it this way. We'll make sure I'll make sure I can get it on film for you guys. So I lean my stretcher up with the legs towards me here, and then I bend down, and then I'm gonna pin the back legs on this side, and I'm not gonna pull, I'm not reefing them on there. It's called a stretcher, but it's more of a form board than it is anything. And especially for coyotes, you do not want to overstretch these coyotes, because you're actually gonna make your hair look thinner on them, and that's gonna cost you money in the long run. So I'm gonna have him loose, I'm gonna have him snug but not tight, I guess is the best way I can put it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my quick pin, and I'm going to go right in the two corners of each leg and poke it in and just kind of pull it snug. I'm using the second hand to just kind of hold the back of my board, and I have my extra pins. If you lay them in there right, you can squeeze your hand and they're not going to stab you. Grab a second one. We're going to grab the other corner of this back leg, kind of pull it down and push it into my board. Okay, we're going to do the other leg here. Pull down, poke through the corner of my leg. So I just kind of start my pin ahead of time. Get it pushed tight into the board. Last pin on the leg side, we're going to push that in. All right, the leg side is done. I don't do anything else. Sometimes I get these extra little flaps. I just kind of make sure they're not like overlapping each other. We're going to turn my coyote around here. So I'm looking at the back. You can see it looks like I have a lot of slack there, which I do. And there's a reason for that. I want as much slack. What I'm going to do here, I lost one of my pins here. So what I do is I just use a shotgun shell box, cut the lid off of it, and I use that to store my pins in. When I want to get them out of there, I just tip it on the side and they dump out. All right, we're going to grab 4 pins again. So I got 4 in the legs. I'm going to put 4 on the back of the coyote. So again, I just kind of crouch down, grab a pin. What I try to do is I try to basically get my pelt so it's somewhat shaped. I don't want to make a bell to my coyote. I don't want him looking like that where he flares way out at the bottom. You know, I could do that and then pin my tail nice and tight. But to me, I don't like how that looks. So I try to pull my side till it runs about straight. Then I go about an inch in on the edge over here and put my pin in and pin him to the board. So it's not like tight, pulled tight to my stretcher right there. It's still got some slack in there, but you can see my shape is pretty even on the side. Now I'll pull it the opposite way and I'll pin the other side doing the same way. So I got my edge so it's pretty straight. Now you can still see I got quite a bit of slack in here. We're going to grab a pin. And what I try to do here is you almost leave a ripple like that in there. I'm not going right next to my tail. I'm going probably, I don't know, almost 1.5 inches over. And then I will pin that. You can see where the seam of my boards are here. I'm going to pin it right next to that seam as close as I can get it. And push it in. So I'm maybe 1/4 inch onto my board. But you can kind of see how that leaves a little ripple in there. And when your fur dries, that will tighten up a little bit, and it actually makes your fur look denser by doing that. So now I'm going to pull my tail this way. Go about, and here's the edge of the tail. I'm going to go about 1.5 inches over. And again, I'm going to try and get that right next to the edge of my board. And these two pins are basically right next to each other. But you see how big of a hump I have in my tail? That will come out of there when I stretch my stretcher out, my adjustable stretcher open. It will pull some of that out of there. All right, we're gonna try and get so you guys could see this. All right, so the last thing we pin is the ears. So I use 10 pins to hold a coyote on a stretcher. And I'm gonna pin each ear up. So I kind of get them opened up so that I don't want to like have any, I don't want to pin them like that where their skin is touching skin, because it won't dry in there. So you're trying to kind of get them laid open as much as you can. Some guys will pin these way up by the eye, but then where that's touching underneath there, it won't dry that well. So I actually try to pin mine short, especially when you're first putting them on the board like this. When I turn my coyote, I will actually try to pull them up a little higher so they look right. But to begin with, I try to pin them almost short, so it kind of bows my ear out. Hope you guys can see that. But then most of that will all dry underneath there before I turn it. Okay. All right, you kind of see how that ear is kind of somewhat rolled up on itself. So I just get that kind of open back up so all that ear will dry. And then get my pin and pin him. Okay. And I just was adjusting my ear a little bit there. All right, so my ears look fine. Then what I do here is I lay the nose of my stretcher on my board over here. I lay the nose on the edge of my table there. I can come down here to this end of my board now. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of pinching and then holding. I'm obviously holding the weight up here. And I'm going to use my thumb to kind of wedge between that crack and then push it open with my thumb. So we're going to pull my nail out. And like I said, I'm kind of squeezing with my hand like this to hold the thing and then just stretching it with my thumb. And that's where using this the same way every time, that's the process I have, and it works really nice. I get my little line I have on my stretcher there kind of lined up with my hole. You know, I can stretch it till I get it kind of lined up, wiggle it back and forth till I can get my nail in. My nail is in. You can see that took a lot of that bulge out of that tail right there, and it tightened everything up really nice on him. I actually just went to the last hole, so he wasn't really all that snug on there. So I actually opened him up. I opened him to the last hole on my stretcher. So now he's really nice and snug on there. We're going to lean him back on his back again. I got one more thing to do. And like this line on there where he was leaning on the table, it's not going to hurt anything. The last thing you do on a coyote is you cut the lower lip off. So you need a knife. Get it sharp. I use a fillet knife. You guys know that I use it for everything. It works very good for this as well. So you want to cut the lower lip off. So obviously this is like the crease of the mouth. I want to cut from there almost straight across up to this side. But on a coyote, I actually like to get some of this extra lip material off of there so that lip part will dry a little bit quicker so I can turn them, because the rest of the hide will dry quick. The head is basically what tells you when you can turn that coyote. So what I try to do, and I'm going to try and move here so you guys can see a little better. You see how there's kind of this little flap of lip? I don't want to cut like the entire lip off all the way to the fur there. I'm going to just pinch this a little bit. Just slowly slice in here. Again, it wasn't cutting as good as I'd like. That's all it takes to get your knife good sharp again. Okay, so I'm just pulling tension out. But you see how I'm leaving a little bit of that lip there, but I'm just cutting off some of that extra. And I'll do that till I get right down to the crease of the mouth. And then now I'll cut the actual hide, go down and around, I'm trying to keep so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go basically straight across and back up. Back up on this side. And then we're going to get kind of that whip started again here. Okay, so now I'm basically only cutting the lip off again, that excess lip, and I'll go up a ways, and voila. So I said, I left the lip basically down to the center of the mouth there, or like the crease in the mouth, and just went down and around the lower lip. You throw that away. All right, he is ready to dry. So what I typically do is lean him up against something. I use my actual freezer that I store all my fur in. So I try to lean him out, you know, probably a 30-degree angle. I check my ears, make sure they stayed open like I want them. The front legs I try to pull out, because if you leave them creased in like that, it won't dry and you might actually get slippage underneath that arm. So I will grab both front legs and kind of stretch them out. And that's why I want an angle. You know, the more of an angle this way I keep, the better those legs will dry. Okay. The last thing I do is I go in the tail here, and I kind of just make sure that tail, especially the top part of it, is open. And once you kind of get it laid there, it will actually lay partially open. As it dries, it will actually curl up. You know, this will kind of curl shut, and then it makes your tail look nice and fluffy when that dries. All right, that is boarding of a coyote. I typically leave my coyote like this, and again, this is just a mark from him leaning on the table. Once he dries, you'll never see that. I leave my coyotes, especially like this one was washed, the fur was dry. He will take probably, my basement is fairly dry down here and it's about 60 degrees. It will take this guy roughly 18 hours to 24 hours to dry, you know, basically the face and the lips enough so he will be dry enough to turn. A fox, it typically is only like sometimes as little as 8 to 12 hours to dry. And again, if you don't wash your fur, it takes a little bit less time for it to dry. Because even though this guy felt dry to the touch, he still might have a little bit of moisture in his hair. And that will actually prevent the skin from drying as quick. So like I said, it'll be probably close to 24 hours. And then this guy will be ready to turn basically tomorrow morning is when I do it. So it's middle of the afternoon. By tomorrow morning, I'll come down, I'll look at him, and he should be ready to turn. So when he's ready, I will turn you guys back on. I will show you what he looks like. We'll take him off. I'll show you turning him and putting him back on the board, and then he'll be ready to go. He'll finish drying like that. So I will turn you guys on in the morning and show you that process. All right, guys. So it's the next day here. You can see I did, well, 3 more there and 1 more right here. I did 5 coyotes yesterday. This one right here is the one that I showed you guys. The full series has all been on this one coyote. So picking the bear skin and the whole works has all been this same coyote here. So we're going to continue with him. It's been roughly 21 hours, I figure, maybe 22. I'm going to try and get you guys up close here so you guys can hear. The body of the coyotes will get kind of crunchy, and you'll be able to hear that just by me kind of just rubbing my hand on this guy. So you can kind of hear how crunchy that gets. And then what I do is I'm just kind of feeling the lips and the nose. The nose is hard. These guys probably could have been turned a couple hours ago, but I had other things going on. So we're going to grab this guy and we're going to start the process of turning him. Alright, so one of the first things I do, again, I use just blue shop rags. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that, but right up here, it's kind of greasy looking. So I just take my shop rag and I just give them a good wipe down all the way down. You make sure you do kind of the edge of the board. Flip him over. You do the belly side here. Okay. I'm gonna leave my rag here. All right, we're gonna take my coyote back over here to my where I do all my fleshing, and we're gonna unpin him here. Unpin the ears. Okay. I'm gonna crouch down here and we're gonna unpin the tail parts. So you could see, well, here, I'll put the pins down. You could see like right here, a little bit of this, just the way it was folded, didn't dry real good. That will be perfectly fine. It did a little on the other side as well. When I turn the coyote and put him back on, that part will be kind of out in the open and it will dry. So we're gonna turn him around and pull the pins for the legs. Okay, I dropped one of them. Okay. Next thing we're gonna do here. Oops. So I just lay his nose on the edge of my table. And then on this end here, what I'm doing again, I'm squeezing, you know, kind of that part of the stretcher on the underside and just pushing with my thumb just to take a little pressure off of my nail. Nail is out. And you can see now there's no pressure, and then I put my nail back in. There has been some questions on why I put my nail back in, and I have it drilled through a hole in this board. What that does is I can grab either side of my stretcher and it doesn't stretch the leather that I have holding that end of my thing. Otherwise, if I take my nail out, this board can move, you know, like a 1/4 inch back and forth, and it's constantly pulling on my leather, and it will eventually tear the leather on that end. And I'm using a leather strap as kind of the swivel point of that end of my stretcher. All right, we got this guy loose. I just stick my foot on the bottom of the stretcher down there, and then I just slide up with my hands and dump him off the top. All right, let's lean my stretcher against my furnace there. All right, so what I just have a chair sitting here. I try to do it over the top of my plastic. I got a couple different video cameras. I got one over here, and I got my phone right up here. So hopefully we'll get this so you guys can see. And we're going to try and do as much of it as I can directly right in front of you here. All right, so I start with the head of my coyotes when I turn them. Coyotes, badgers, fox, the 3 animals I do that are sold fur out. I do them, I start with the head and then work my way towards the tail. So what we're going to do first, we're just going to take my finger and tuck the ears in. So the ears are on the opposite side. Okay, and then if you let them get too dry, and there really isn't a too dry when it comes to these, it just is a little more difficult to get them turned if you let it get too dry, let's put it that way. I think you could basically dry them for a week like this and you'd still be able to turn them. I like to turn them when they're still a little bit soft, because I feel like the process we're going to show you when I get him turned and put him back on the board will actually help my fur presentation a little bit. When he's still soft, I could kind of dictate the direction of the fur. All right, so we're going to take my nose here, and we're going to, so I'm grabbing on the inside of the lips, and I'm going to kind of push the middle of his nose kind of down, and then just kind of roll his nose inside out here, and then push the actual nose itself out. And the nose usually gets fairly hard and dry, so it takes a little bit of effort to kind of get that, you know, poking back out so it looks normal. I don't get super carried away. If you let them dry too much, that nose is going to be the worst part to get turned. All right, what I do now, so I got, you know, my lower lip removed, so I got a nice hole there. I basically just tip my nose down and stick it in that hole. And now I'm basically going to just start on each edge, and I'm just going to kind of roll it in and just keep rolling it in. Okay, push on this side. And basically what I'm going to do is just go from one side to the other, back and forth. So I'm literally just kind of folding it in with my thumbs. I'm using this hand to kind of hold it while I push one side, turn it a little, push with this side. Okay, I'm up to where the ears are at. Okay, now I'm, okay, and every now and then you can kind of see I'm kind of pulling it open with my hands here. All that's doing is just kind of straightening it all out. If you keep it all wedged up like that, you're never going to get him turned inside out. So I kind of keep straightening them out as I go. So right now, this is the belly side, this is the back side. So I'm just going to keep kind of working my way. And once you get going, see how I started on the belly side, and it doesn't really matter where you start, but I start on the belly side, and then I just kind of hold that, and then I go all the way around the whole thing. And again, all I'm doing is just kind of rolling my thumb, and I'm going maybe an inch, inch and a half at a time, probably closer to an inch and a half. You get too aggressive, you can't, it will start balling up on you and not want to slide. So right now, like the nose part of it is actually sliding down on the inside. It's down probably this far in. So if you get too aggressive, it won't want to slide. Okay. Just about to the front legs here. So getting it going is usually the trickiest part. And once you kind of get it going, the belly gets, or the body gets bigger the farther down I get in there. So you have more room to actually turn him. You know, up where the neck is, you know, it's fairly small, and you don't have quite as much room to turn him. Okay. I try to be a little bit careful around that front leg, because again, the hairs, or the hide is a little bit thinner around the front legs. And I got them pushed through. This one's going really easily, but so I don't need to do this. But if you're having trouble with it, like pushing in, you know, it's kind of balling up right where you're pushing. What you can do is you can reach up inside here, and right here's the nose. I'm going to grab and just pinch on the top and pull the nose. And you can see that kind of straightened it all out. It pulled it all nice and tight and kind of gives you a little more room. So just in case this part of it wasn't sliding down through like you wanted, by grabbing it and pulling it, that will kind of straighten it all out. So again, we're just going to keep kind of working my way around here. Like I said, there's more room the farther I get down, so you can be a little more aggressive by how much you're taking and pushing in each time. So right now I have the belly facing up and the back on the bottom. You can push in the two sides, and that will kind of bring the back and bottom with it. All right, you can see how it kind of balled up in there. It didn't like pull through. So I just pinch it with this hand here, and then I'll just grab the nose and pull it. See, and that straightened it right out again. Some coyotes you can go the whole thing and never have to do that. This one I probably could. I just wanted to show you how to fix that if that does happen to you. All right, so I'm right down to the end of the belly. I try to be very careful right by the edge of the belly because I don't want it to tear right there. So I try to be careful right at the edge of the belly, and then roll the two legs around. All right, so that coyote is turned. He's ready to go here. So I'm going to take you outside quick, and I'm going to show you. I do one thing that I don't know that I ever see anybody else doing when they show this. So I'm going to take you outside, and I'll show you what I do with that. All right, guys, so you can see from taking him off the board, you know, he's kind of crinkled up a little bit. His hair ain't really laying as nice as it could. There's always just a few loose hairs that are on him. You know, from fleshing, you might rub just a few off, whatever. So he's always a little bit roughed up when you first take him off the stretcher. And when you're turning him, you know, the hide is still crinkly. and it's not always, even though I can pull on him, it doesn't always straighten out as nice as I want. So what I do is I try to make sure my ears are turned and pulled out to the outside nice. I guess it doesn't really matter at this stage, but I try to make sure they're always on the outside. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab inside of his nose, and we're going to give him about 3 good whips here. And the wind is kind of blowing this direction, so there was a few hairs that kind of will whip off of him. But you can kind of see now his back is all, you know, it whips him so he's laying the same way you would normally put him back on the board. But you can kind of see his hair is all laying nice and straight the way you want it to be. So he's ready to go back on the board now. And like I said, just a couple good whips kind of straightens him back out. It gets all those crinkles out of the pelt and all that. He's ready to go back on the board. Let's go in and we'll get him put back on. All right, guys, so we're back in. You can kind of see how that kind of straightens him all out, gets him, you know, so the back is on the back, so he ain't all kind of crumpled up into a ball. He's ready to go back onto the stretcher. Again, I want to make sure the side of my stretcher with the nail on it, I want that to be his back. So we're just going to grab his tail and just slide him onto the stretcher here. All right, one thing that I do so you can kind of see, you know, that he's flopped up, I stick my fingers in the front leg holes, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of pushing my fingers. Let's set him down so you can see. I'm sticking my legs in his legs, or in my fingers in his leg holes, and I'm kind of pulling them towards me. So I stick my fingers in kind of an angle towards the inside, and then I'm pulling the legs towards me because I want my front legs on my side of the board. So what I'm doing is I'm sticking my fingers in, so I'm in both front legs, and I'm just making sure they're on my side of the board here. And then we're just slowly kind of sliding him down. And as I'm sliding him down, I can pull kind of side to side on him and straighten him out so he's running straight on my board, so he's not turned a little one way or turned a little the other way. So we're going to pull him all the way down, and I just kind of pull a little on his nose, pull a little into his legs, and then I kind of grab on each side and just kind of give him a little light tug there. All right, so he looks like he's sitting on there pretty straight. Give him a little tap just to make sure he straightens out a little. I like to kind of look at the back to see, make sure my back is kind of running right down the middle of the back of my board. All right, he's ready to pin back on. So same process as pinning him on when he was, I dropped one of my pins. Same process as pinning him on. We're just gonna pin the inside of the leg first. Again, he's fairly dry, so you can't really pull him too much. So I pinned one side, we'll pin the other here quick. Pin the inside of the other leg. And the outside. Okay, that part of him's done. We're gonna turn him around. Grab 4 more pins here. Okay, and we're gonna kind of do the same process as last time because I don't want him like bell-shaped at the bottom. So I kind of pull the tail out and I grip like this. So what I'm feeling for is I'm making sure all the hair is kind of on the outside so it's not rolled up under there. And then I'm just kind of pinching the hide and the fur right at the edge of it. So then when I go to put my pin in, I know my pin is right on the edge of the actual hide. You could have it up a little ways, it wouldn't hurt anything. But again, I try to keep it somewhat close to the bottom. So I got one side done. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just pinching, just kind of sliding my fingers down until I get towards the edge of the pelt. So I can kind of guide my pin in where I want it. So you can see like I'm, you know, that's the length of the fur. So I just only like a 1/4 inch up on the actual hide. Okay, we're going to kind of make the same ripple effect we had before. So I'm kind of grabbing and twisting like this to kind of make this part stick out at me just a little. And then I'm just doing the same thing, kind of running my finger down, making sure all the hair is on the outside and not rolled up underneath in there until I find the edge of the pelt. and just kind of use that to help me guide my pin. Do the same thing on this side. Make sure all the fur's on the outside. Kind of pinch where I want my pin and pin it. You can kind of see that leaves me a little bit extra in the middle here, but like when we put him on the first time, that will give me the room to let him stretch open. Okay. Got 2 pins for the ears. Now I try to get my ears pinned up nice and tight. So I'm almost like I got my pin through the edge of his ear and I'm pulling up on that guy to get it laid nice and flat right to his head. And same thing with this one. Okay, both my ears, I make sure that they're kind of laying out, that they're not like crumpled up right at the base of the ear there. Set my nose on the table down over here. Nose on the table. Come back to this end, pull my nail out. And we'll just slide him back open. I try to pay attention. So he was open to the last hole on my stretcher. So I try to pay attention to that to open him the same amount when I put him back on. And you can see that tightened up, you know, his hide nice on there. We're just about done. The last thing that I do, so this is just another dog comb. This is a fine-toothed one. You know, it's fine wire as opposed to like this kind of real heavy aggressive one. I use a fine one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comb just real lightly going down, just to kind of straighten him out as I comb. And you're gonna get just a few burrs. You know, this guy had a lot of burrs in him so to get a few pieces is fine. Now I'm gonna start right up here by the ears, and I'm gonna comb the whole pelt up. So right now, like a lot of guys will do this, they'll comb their fur down and it will dry down like that. When you take it off the board, it's not gonna wanna fluff up very good. You know, it's gonna essentially look just like this when I go to take him off the board. I mean, it looks nice, it makes him look complete, but to me it doesn't give him the true puff that a coyote should have. So the way I get mine to look puffy, we're just gonna quick go over here. You know, you look at like how that coyote, like the edges and everything, see how he looks like he's nice and puffy? You know, and this is the belly side, like all the hair kind of sticks out, his neck is all nice and puffed out. So the way I get mine to look like that, I actually comb them backwards. So we're gonna start right up here by the ear. So I'm just hanging onto his nose, the end of the board there. And we're gonna just real light comb backwards. All right, what we're actually gonna do, I'm gonna comb one side. So I kind of keep going down. You could start down here, but when I go up, see how there's places that don't actually comb right? By starting at the top and only doing a few inches at a time, I get that to straighten right out and look nice. All right, so I did half of him already. So this side it was combed down, this side is combed up. You can tell there's a little bit difference. You can see the underwool a little bit, but all the guard hairs are going up right now, angled up. And that's where I don't want to let my fur get over dry, because by having him only partially dried when I turn him, all these hair follicles haven't really set into the pelt until it's completely dry. So by combing it up, when it finally dries, it kind of sets the hair follicles. To me, it's setting them up. And like I said, that allows me to get a little bit of a puffier look. So I'm going to do the whole edge of the board all the way down here. And I'll even comb just a little around on the belly side. And you can kind of see right down the middle of the back, you got the hackle right in the middle of the back between the front shoulders, but there's always a little bit of a ripple right down the middle of the back. And if you walk up to a coyote that's kind of on edge, they'll have that whole section of their back all puffed up, all the way from their head all the way to their tail. They can get that puffed up. So again, I'm just kind of going gently, and I'm actually kind of going on each side of that ruffle, and then I'll go right down the middle of that ruffle and get it. So I hope you could see, like, this whole little streak right here is all sticking up. And again, that's like the center of their back. This is the hackle, the part that's the longest, right in the middle there. And get that edge of the board a little. And then we're going to flip him over. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to comb all that neck area all the way down the middle of the belly, all the way to the end of his legs down there. And we're going to comb that all up towards the top. Okay, when I get it all so it looks pretty uniform, I usually roll him back over, just make sure this side didn't really change here, and it looks good. So that guy is done. He is ready to dry. I'll leave him on here probably 3 more days. Now you can stand him up a little straighter because I don't have to worry about the front legs. But there he is. So I will let him dry just like that. And you can see he still looks like he's matted down, but all that fur is going up on him now. When I go to take him off and I give him a good shake, he'll puff right up real nice, just like that one looks. This one's like a semi-heavy coyote. He's not real thick in the middle. So is this one. But like I said, the hair will kind of puff and stand right out. Stand right up once you shake them. So I'll take him off the board and I'll just give him like 2 more shakes like that, like I just did outside, and he'll puff right back up again. The last thing, I guess, I go through and I just make sure my tail is laying straight again, because I don't want to twist it like that or it'll never dry. So I just stick my fingers up in there to like the base of the tail, and I just kind of make sure that it's laying straight all the way to the tip. Oop. And I'll leave it just like that, and that guy is done. That is the end of the boarding process. Probably won't video it, but to take him off the board again, take the 10 pins out of him, put the stretcher back together, slide him off just how I showed, and like I said, I'll give him like 2 good shakes, and that will puff him up. And then like I said, there'll be one more video coming up that I may even show that part of it in, but I'm going to do the last kind of finishing steps to get a coyote ready to actually sell. So this one here is just off the board. There's a few more things I'll do to this guy just to kind of a final combing, a final cleaning, everything, just to kind of get him ready to sell. So in 4 or 5 days, whenever I'm done, ready to take him off of there, I will I'll do the last video in this series will be that. Be kind of the finishing steps to make them look the best I can before I go to sell them. If you guys have any questions on doing turning your coyotes, again, the same kind of process for fox. Badgers are typically a little bit tougher because you got to let the head and stuff dry a little more. They're more like a raccoon like this, so you got to let them dry, to me, almost 48 hours sometimes to get them dry enough to turn them so they don't spoil between your board and the hide on a badger. But coyotes and fox, like I said, it's usually the next day. Fox can be a little bit less because they even have a thinner skin than coyotes. So if you guys got any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. If you got any suggestions that me or anybody else might get a little bit of use out of, please leave them down below. We're all here to help each other, so I want to hear what you guys think. If you do the same thing I do, if you do something different, again, leave them down in the comments. I like to hear that, whether I'm doing it right or wrong. Please leave me the comments down below so we all can learn from each other. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on the next Schmattz Outdoors video.